what do we make of the Browns and Deshaun Watson? There was a recent report from Albert Breer over at SI, says that the league's hoping to have any discipline meted out before the season. Now, obviously, look, to set this up for anyone who's not been following this, Watson is still facing 22 civil suits, ranging a wide variety of different allegations of sexual misconduct and assault. He has faced 10 criminal complaints, which were all dismissed by a pair of grand juries down in Texas. So, as of right now, it is all civil suits, which are not criminal by nature. They're all financial in nature, but obviously alleging some pretty heinous things. Where do you come down on not maybe what you would do or what you think should happen, but what the NFL is going to do with Deshaun Watson in relation to how long he may be suspended for the season?
Well, I don't have a ton of faith in the NFL coming down as hard as maybe they should. I've seen some reports out there, some speculation being like he's going to play fewer than 8 games this year. Maybe he gets suspended for an entire season again. He's got that fully guaranteed contract with the Browns, so it's not like they're taking money out of his pocket either way. And they kind of budgeted for this too. With that contract, they're kind of expecting the hammer to drop here. At least they've set themselves up to be prepared for that. I think that the NFL is going to come down medium on this one. I think that there's a lot of pressure, I think, from the Browns on the NFL to not turn this into like a Tom Brady situation with the, deflate gate and all that kind of stuff, which, Tom Brady, got like a 4-game suspension for that.
Yeah.
So you would say optically, the way that the NFL has handled a lot of these cases before, you think of Ray Rice, you think of some of these other, other cases that have popped up here.
Yeah, Greg Hardy.
Yeah, they have to. The NFL should come down hard on Deshaun Watson, both because it's the right thing to do. They're a self-governing body. They're allowed to treat this however they want to outside of the legal system. But optically, the NFL, this is their opportunity to kind of right some wrongs from the past and go, look, we do take this seriously. We are going to come down hard. And we also, there's outside of the optics, just from a good, decent human being standpoint, there is no place for this in our league. If you're an employee in the league, we do not stand for this, and you're not going to be allowed to play in this league if you engage in this kind of behavior.
So here's how, and I think it's well put, Hill. I would say this. Look, first of all, we're recording this on Tuesday late morning. If you're not watching live, it should be kept in mind that tonight on HBO there's going to be a show with Brian Gumbel, his show Real Sports, which is excellent, where many of these women who are watching accusers are going to speak. Now, the NFL's probably already seen the tape and knows what's going to come out, but you're going to have, you would imagine, some pretty viral clips that come out of this, some pretty detailed allegations that maybe haven't been made public or haven't been made public in such a way yet. So, like, I hear the people who say he is not facing criminal charges, therefore the NFL should not butt in and should not become the judge, jury, and executioner as it has in the past. However, the NFL is a business. It is an extremely public one. The NFL has suspended guys who have been accused of far less for a long period of time. Okay, Ezekiel Elliott is an example. I think Watson's going to get a pretty hefty suspension. You have to keep this thought. So recently, now they're different situations, but Trevor Bauer got suspended for 2 years by Major League Baseball.
Good point.
Okay. If you're the NFL, you want to be the league that suspends Deshaun Watson for 4 games? I don't think so. I would be surprised if he plays more than half the season. I think he's at least going to get, and again, it's my opinion, who knows, but I think he's going to get somewhere around 10 to 12 games, and I wouldn't be shocked if he got a year. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe the league says, hey, look, it's civil cases. It's not criminal complaints at this point. They've been dismissed. It's possible. But the NFL got crushed years ago, and you mentioned this, like Ray Rice. Mm-hmm. They got crushed back then when they suspended him for 2 games, and then the video came out. What happens if they suspend Watson before these civil suits get taken care of, and they suspend him on the lighter side, and then a whole bunch of other stuff comes out, even if he's not facing criminal charges. So I think in the end, the optics of it are what's going to drive the NFL more than anything, and that may be an unseemly way of, an unseemly way of looking at it, because you say, well, it should be driven by a moral compass. Well, it's a National Football League.
No,
They're going to be driven more by how the news cycle is going to react to it, and so that's why I think he's going to get suspended, and I think it's going to be a pretty hefty suspension. But you're right, because he's only getting $1 million in base pay this year, because the Browns made sure to take care of him every way possible. He's not going to hit a huge financial bump in the road. It's going to be more just about missing time. Look, let's pivot now. With that in mind, now, of course, this next question is a little loaded because you just don't know how many games he's going to be there for. But do you think the Browns are a playoff team this year? Obviously, they brought him in. They just brought back Jadeveon Clowney. They didn't lose any massive players this year. You know, they traded for Amari Cooper, kind of replacing Jarvis Landry. Do you think they're a playoff team? Do you think they're outside looking in the AFC?
I think that they're on the outside looking in the first year of whatever this Deshaun Watson thing is. Because you take, let's say he plays a majority of the season. Sure. You have to then look at the rest of the AFC and say, first of all, in the AFC North, are they better than Baltimore? And are they better than Cincinnati? Right. And I don't think the answer is yes to either of those questions. And then you have to consider at the bottom of the playoffs, are they better than some of those teams that got in at the end, like right at the bottom of the playoffs last year? Or are they better than some of the teams that missed the playoffs but improved? So think about the Chargers and how, once again, it seems like the Chargers are everybody's dark horse Super Bowl favorite for like as long as I've been alive. It seems like they've been the team right about now. Everybody picks to go to the Super Bowl, but they are pretty good with Herbert and some of the improvements that they made. They traded for Khalil Mack, Denver and Russell Wilson. Like that's something that you got to think about. I don't think that the Browns make the playoffs this year. I'm not saying that whatever this next era in the franchise is going to be as disastrous as some of the other ones. I do think that Deshaun Watson is a vastly better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. And if that's the difference maker, he's going to make them a better team. He's going to at least get them closer to the playoffs. I don't think that right now the Browns, if you look at the AFC, they're better than the top heavy teams. So even if they get in, they're not going to go very far because I don't think they're beating Kansas City. We'll see what Tennessee is. All of those teams, Buffalo. But my thing is I'm looking at Cleveland and some of those teams that missed the playoffs last year. And I don't think that they're going to be better than Denver. And I don't think that they're going to be better than the Chargers. And they're not going to get into the playoffs if it comes down to which of these two teams do you like better? Do you like Russell Wilson in Denver? Or do you like Deshaun Watson in Cleveland or quarterback X in Cleveland? Yeah. It's, I just can't feel Cleveland this year.
So when I made all my picks where I picked every game for the season, I basically went under the assumption that Watson would play every game just because I didn't know how else to handicap it. It felt kind of weird. I felt like you had kind of all or nothing, and I was like, well, I'll just put him in. I had him at 10-7, but not making the playoffs, losing a tiebreaker to Denver, so they were right on the edge. But I do think he's going to be suspended for some games, and if he's even suspended for 4 games, that's probably the difference in the AFC. Like the AFC is just so good, as Gonzo points out in the chat, and I agree with him. It's a tough division. You mentioned Baltimore and Cincinnati. I'm with you. I think Cincinnati and Baltimore are both better than Cleveland. And Pittsburgh, well, I think the Browns are better than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's going to be a pain in the ass because it's Tomlin and that defense, and they're always a tough team to play, especially in Pittsburgh. They will give every one of those teams a tough game. Every one of those teams that goes in there, it's going to be a brawl. It's going to be 20-17 one way or the other. I'll tell you what's an interesting game. So on the schedule, the Browns host the Chargers. I mean, that might be a game where you're talking about tiebreakers at the end of the season, right? Like I saw Peter King, who I have the utmost respect for. He put out his power rankings. He, for the whole league, 1, 2, 3 was Buffalo, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. I don't even think the Chargers qualify as a dark horse anymore. It's to the point now where the Chargers are basically printing up the banner, and it's just a matter of whether or not they blow like 8 games they shouldn't blow. But I digress. Look, I think the Browns, I cannot make the argument in good faith that they're better than Buffalo. We just talked about the 2 teams in their own division. Somebody's coming out of the South, whether it's Indy or Tennessee. I like Indy, but and you can make an argument Cleveland's better than any of those teams. Fine. But then you get to the West. They're not better than Kansas City. I don't think they're better than the Chargers, and I don't think they're better than Denver. But That said, I think it's really going to come down to how many games does Watson miss? Because if he's there, on the field, I love the pairing of he and Stefanski. Defensively, they're good. They're not great, but they're good. And the only concern I have is offensively, like who are you throwing the ball to? It's
Mhm.
Cooper, and then it's a bunch of guys. But they have a great offensive line. They can run the hell out of the ball, so they should be interesting. I think they're right on the edge, but I don't know if they get it.
Yeah, and as far as the suspension is concerned, too, to kind of tie a bow around that, I wouldn't be shocked. I kind of agree with you if he gets that year-long suspension, because if we're talking about optics, and the NFL is no stranger to doing the wrong thing and just getting absolutely hammered. And Twitter is not a legal court. It's the court of public opinion, but that's the majority of where these conversations happen. And you can just see if he gets a 4-game suspension or a 6-game, even an 8-game suspension, the first thing people are going to point to, and it's going to be a lightning rod, is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley got suspended for an entire season for betting on football. And immediately the optics are the NFL cares more about its betting business interests than it does about women. And it's not the first time that we've had that conversation about the NFL, but that's why I think I agree with you, leaning more towards the really dropping the hammer for what seems like the first time ever for the NFL. Is that's going to be the comparison everybody makes. Calvin Ridley got a year for betting on football. Deshaun Watson got this for doing something that's far more heinous than betting on the Falcons too. Like, that's just stupid. Who bets on the Falcons?
I'll tell you what it is. It's a damn cry for help. I mean, I enjoyed the. And I'm going to get this a little off because I don't have the story in front of me. But one of the bets Calvin Ridley put down was like an 8-game like parlay. I mean, you got to have some stones to throw on an 8-game parlay for $1,500 or whatever it was. So yeah, Calvin Ridley, that story really that one of these days that'll be like a 30 for 30 short.